Welcome to the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast, presented by Fantasy Data. Here's your hosts, Billy Muzio and Bradley Stalder.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Football Fanalist Podcast presented by Fantasy Data. Tonight, we have a special guest on. Tonight, SiriusXM host Ray Flowers, also owner and executive vice president of FantasyGuru.com and Elite Fantasy Headquarters. He is a full-time fantasy analyst for the last 20 years, and most importantly, he is dad of Dexter Kitty in the background. You can find Dexter Kitty on Twitter as well. He's got more followers than most of us analysts on the small-time scales, and we are excited to have Ray on tonight. Ray, welcome to the show.
Hey, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, it's been a long ride to get here. I feel old, though. Again, I'm bald and gray, so I don't think I'm fooling anyone that I'm a youngster. And it's always great to have the kitten over your shoulder, giving you some moral support if he's not in the room. Though he might come in at some point and yell. You never know.
You know, that beard on you in the back, is that real?
Yeah, and I can actually, I'll link it to you guys after we're done here. It was a COVID beard, and I grew it for like 7 months or 8 months, 9 months. I forget what it was. I can look it up, but I didn't shave ever. And so I had this huge beard. And then I actually took some video of it that's on my Instagram account where my lady friend was shaving it off. And in the end, we kept the beard. We mounted it on a plaque, and it's sitting in the other room right now.
That's fantastic.
Disturbing, but fantastic. Yeah.
You should have dyed it black to have the black beard for the Giants.
Would have been good. You're right.
It would have been magnificent. Well, we have a couple questions for Ray, rapid fire here. Our time with him is limited, so I want to just rock and roll as fast as we can through these to maximize our time. So I'm going to hop right into these questions, Ray. So feel free to just elaborate or as much as you want or as little as you like. But first question I have is, how did you get your start in the fantasy football industry, and how did you get to where you are now?
A lot of hard work. And I always tell people to get there, to really do it full time, you have to be dedicated. I missed dinners. I missed parties. I missed dates. It's one of those things you have to work really hard. And my story is a really circuitous one. Quickly, I'll try to encapsulate it. I was in grad school. I was doing fantasy baseball writing on the side. I was working for a company called Fantasy Planet, and they owned fantasyfootball.com, fantasybaseball.com, fantasybasketball.com, and all the fantasy.coms. These two guys had bought all the domain names. And they own fantasyhockey.com, and I was doing some work on the side for them, and they said, "Hey, Ray, you want to pick up this hockey thing?" I said, "Sure, I love hockey. I'll do that." So I actually helped develop fantasyhockey.com. I put the team together with the developer, and they were so impressed by what I did that they gave me a full-time job. So my first full-time job in fantasy was actually not because of my baseball writing or because of my football writing, it was because of my hockey writing. I'm still the only guy that's ever hosted a show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio that's only hockey. A lot of people don't know that. I don't do hockey anymore. There's just too much baseball and football going on. But basically, I was in school. I got my master's degree. And right as I got that degree, this opportunity arose where they gave me the full-time offer like 2 weeks before I was graduating. And so I thought I'll put off my work for PhD because I was going to go to school to do that. I put it on hold for a year and see, how this fantasy thing goes. And here we are 20 years later.
That's awesome. The leap of faith. You took the leap of faith, and it paid off big time. Yeah. I'm a business owner. Bradley is an educator. I won't speak for Bradley, let him do his own thing, but we have our ambitions are to be able to do this full time, of course, and to get there. With being a business owner, you can kind of multitask and juggle as well.
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bradley. Oh, Bradley, you speak. Go ahead, Howard.
Yeah, you do. I've been silent. I'm just listening. I know that Billy he's been waiting for this moment. I've been trying to give him the floor, give him the honors. But Ray, it's been great to just have you on to start and hear that story. And it's inspiring to see that this journey can be very fruitful. And to see that it's not just one path fits all. I think it's really, important for a lot of people to see that, it's not easy. It's going to take a lot of hard work. But at the same time that, it's not going to be just one path like fantasy hockey. Like who would have thought that would bring you to where you are right now? So really grateful for you spending time with us so far. But if there's one, we're relatively new. You've been in the game for a while. If there's one piece of advice you could give to us, we've been having the Fantasy Football Fanalist podcast for about a year now, so we're still relatively new in the industry. What's some advice you could give to new podcasters or content creators, as we're getting started and getting our feet off the ground here?
Yeah, I would say number one, enjoy eating top ramen because you don't make a lot of money. At least that was what I ate 25 years ago when I was starting. I think it's important that, I said this right at the start. I'll echo it just at the beginning here. You gotta work hard, and you have to be willing to put the time in. I know it sucks because we're all underpaid at the start, if you're even getting paid. I always tell people, because there have been various points in time where I manage staffs and all that, and I've always told people, look, this is what I can offer you. If someone else is going to pay twice as much money, take the job. I think that it's important for people to, apply themselves. It's important for them to realize that it's not going to be high paying. There's going to be a lot of work. I never discourage anyone from taking a paying gig. I think it's very important to get that foot in the door. And I think ultimately you have to find your own voice. You can't try to be me. It won't work. I can't try to be Jeff Manns. It won't work. You got to be yourself. And you got to have the confidence that what you're doing is worth something. So I think finding your own voice and not being afraid also to be different, because let's face this, you go to Spotify or iTunes, whatever, there's millions of these things now. They're everywhere, right? So something that sets you apart, and again, not being a jackass, not being a loudmouth, just you, but don't be afraid to innovate. I think a lot of people in this space kind of just do, Ray, you wrote this article in 2003. You're still writing it now. If I was doing that, I probably wouldn't be in this space. So don't be afraid to innovate and push the thing forward a little bit and get your name out there.
You know what I heard from that, Bradley, is that Billy can just drink as much wine as he wants on Friday Night Live.
Hey, that's your thing. Yeah,
Oh, I'm a wino. I love wine. We were talking about getting the sound effects for every time I fill a glass or run out of a bottle or whatever.
Red or white? What's your favorite?
Red, always red for me. I mean, I'll drink wine on a hot day outside or when I'm having something to pair with, but typically red. Room temperature while I'm recording. Don't have to worry about a koozie with a beer. Rock and roll, just hanging out and chilling with Bradley.
Bradley's the straight man. He's drinking water.
No, I'll have my my beer. I'm from the Midwest of Michigan.
Okay.
But I'll have a good Leinenkugel summer shandy.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, but there's a lot of breweries here in Michigan, in the Midwest, and hit those up, especially not just football. I know you're into baseball as well. I've hit a bunch of. Yesterday, I've got sunburn on my face. I don't know if you can tell with how bright the lights are, but we went to Detroit really. Tigers a game, and I was telling all the students, I took them on the field trip for our summer academy.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
I would say we took almost 40 students, and more than half of them, it was their first baseball game ever.
Wow.
And so that was an awesome experience, but I was telling them, not all the stadiums are the same and not all the cities are the same. That's obvious, but there are a lot of students here in Detroit who they've never left the city. Mm-hmm. So just giving them that experience has been great. So sharing sports has been, something that's really awesome, and to do it in this platform too, having a special voice and why don't we get back to the football? But nevertheless, the reason why I shared that is because of all the breweries I've hit along in the different baseball towns as well. So, yeah.
So back to questions here. What do you think is your greatest competitive edge versus other football players and colleagues in the industry?
Well, I think that, good question. I think that it's probably, and Jeff Manns and I, my buddy over at Fantasy Guru, we both say this all the time. And, you have to have a modicum of talent. You can't, speak, you can't write if you can't do it. I mean, there's varying degrees of success and, aptitude for things, but you have to be proficient at least. I think what sets me apart is that I'm just a stubborn SOB and not in personality or anything like that. But, I always thought that, I knew a little bit about this, that I thought I had something useful to say that people might care about, but I just work harder than everyone else. I really don't think that there's a replacement for that. So I think my advantage is that, I've told these stories to people, privately, professionally. There was a day once when I was working at Fanball years ago. I didn't leave the house for 14 straight days, and I'm not exaggerating. I literally didn't leave the house for 14 straight days. We were putting out 4 magazines. We had like 7 people on staff. It was a disaster running around. I didn't leave the house. My old boss, Ryan Houston at Fantasy Planet, would call me up at 11 o'clock at night and be like, Ray, I need some 15-page thing tomorrow morning by 9 in the morning. I'd work all night. So I really think that was my key. I had talent, but really it was the fact that I was stupidly willing to do whatever was necessary in order for people to see that.
So let's hop in now. I want to hop in since we're about the halfway point here with our time with you now is we like to talk about this podcast and we'd like to say we're giving league winning takes. And I think that's what we're trying to separate ourselves from the rest of this business and with all the we talked about, like the millions of podcasts that are out there. So I find there's nothing better than finding that late round, rounds 13 or 9 through 13, that player that significantly outperforms their ADP. So if you can give me one player that you think in 2021 will significantly outperform their ADP between rounds 9 and 13, who would it be?
Do you guys find a way, by the way, I'll pose a question both to you and Bradley, Billy. Do you guys find that anyone cares about that specific topic? Because I think it's the right question. I think it's the way to do it. But I seemingly get all these questions about, top 40 players. It's like all anyone wants to talk about is who to take in the first or second round. Do you guys find your audience more interested in these deeper selections, which I think are actually more important to success?
We do. I mean, we do a lot. I do a lot of FFPC drafting, playing a lot of high stakes leagues. I do, very, very high volume. And so the listeners that we get that come over will watch full drafts. Will watch us get through the whole shebang. We'll comment on picks that we're making in rounds 15, 16, 17. And for me, and I can speak for a lot of the people who actually have commented on our live feeds, they interact with those late picks because I have consistently said that these are the kind of picks that win leagues. I mean, we are talking about like last year, Josh Allen, round 11 was a smash play MVP caliber season who won people many fantasy championships. Stephon Diggs was going 6 and 7. Okay, great. However, Aaron Rodgers, literally the MVP of the season, was going in round 11. You have these type of players who are coming in that are significantly outperforming their ADP that should be, round 5 picks, round 4 picks that we're seeing now in 2021. If you can get ahead of that curve and you can kind of project how this landscape is going to be in the NFL, how is that going to affect your team in 2021? And how can that help you win money, win a championship in these, especially these high stakes and these tournament drafts? And that's what I'm trying to bring to, the value to our listeners is this is where you win championships, is these drafts and these rounds.
Yeah. Same thing for you, Bradley. You feel the same way?
There was this past year during the podcast, we would even have a special segment for a deep cut of the week. In particular, where we'd look at either a waiver wire player or some other player that was not highly rostered, and we'd look at like why that player has a particular upside or a very strong matchup that players should be considering, especially against consensus. And a lot of times they would hit a lot more often just because we were able to do that analysis and look at that. Like for instance, my boy Robert Tunyon here.
I see that. Yeah.
That
was his March deep cut of the week last year.
That'll play.
Yeah.
So that won Billy a lot of money too. So,
right.
So we learned a lot and we thought about the backgrounds of these players and not just like what is the data telling us, but also what are the profiles. And so, bringing a lot of different factors into analyzing it. But yeah, I think that these are really important, and that's what's going to, separate you from, if you look at rounds 1 through 4, like there are just similar bust rates for those running backs. Like it doesn't matter. Sure. Like the top tier running backs are going to be like legendary, but like, they're still going to, but like there's still the bust rates are similar, but rounds 1 and 2 to 3 to 4. So Yeah,
no, I agree with you guys. And I think that it's a great question to ask when you're talking about going deep. And there's almost a couple of ways to answer it, because you can say to yourself, because this is what people normally do. Which guy can I take that, is a 10th round pick and he gives me 8th round value? That's a win. Okay. That's great. That's, he's a wide receiver 3 or whatever. That's a different question than what guy can I take in the 10th round that's going to be a top 25 overall player. So I think people have to define, how they're doing that. When I hear the question from you, Billy, I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to look at a player that's outside. I went outside the top 200. I just went deep. I just said, what the hell? And the name that I saw that it came down to for me, I just threw out Bashad Perriman. And the reason is, like, you look at the Lions, and we're all expecting that offense to take a step back without Stafford. They've got Jared Goff. Everyone thinks Jared Goff, should throw left-handed. I mean, he doesn't know where the sun sets. We know that. He doesn't know East or West. But you look at the team, and an NFL team's still going to throw the ball 35 times a week. And you look at the receiving core, and it's Amon-Ra Brown, it's Quintez Cephas, it's Terrell Williams. Like, come on. Like, someone has to
Chad
catch the ball.
Hansen.
Yeah, well, maybe. But you look at TJ Hawkinson, who everyone's excited about, but that's like it in the receiving core. So Brashad Perriman, to me, I think you can draft him. Again, he's so late and there's a legitimate possibility he's a wide receiver 3 by the end of the season, just because someone's got to see those targets, someone's got to catch those passes, and even if the numbers aren't 12 touchdowns or 1,100 yards, I'm not expecting him to be one of these top 25 kind of breakout players. I could easily see him being someone that people are playing on a weekly basis, at least at the flex spot.
Yeah, Brashad Perriman, I've shown him in 12.5% of my FFPC leagues. I was getting him in like late, or very late, especially in like early drafts in like March and April. I was getting him in around like 19, 20. And I mean, he was slated as the wide receiver 1 on the team. Maybe Tyrell Williams. There's an argument to be made there, but extreme value. This team's gonna be playing from behind a lot, and they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. So, and we've seen the kind of weeks that he's able to produce. And at that type of value, I mean, you just hit the hammer on the nail. You're looking at a wide receiver 3 possibly on a week-to-week basis with upside wide receiver 2 on some weeks at damn near free in drafts. Mm-hmm. So I love the pick. My first one is going to be Marvin Jones, and he's going off the boards in like rounds 12 through 13 right now in FFPC as wide receiver 59. And we talked about, players that can reach you top 20 potential. And I think that Marvin Jones is that player that could hit that top 20 potential. I mean, he finished last year as wide receiver 18, averaging 14.2 fantasy points a game. And he finished as a top 20 wide receiver in 2 of the last 4 years. Yes, a different offense. Yes, a different system. But I mean, last year he was the 8th best wide receiver in the league with 9 scores. He scored 9 touchdowns in at least 3 of the last 4 years. And I mean, he is, a monster in the red zone. He was actually the 16th most targeted wide receiver in the red zone. And so for somebody going in the rounds 12 to 13 with potential of top 20 upside, to me is a smash steal, smash pick every single time I hit him in rounds 12 or 13.
To get beat touchdown looks, I mean, at the end of the day, there's so much parity with the receivers most of the time if they're not getting 10 targets a week. That if you can find those kind of guys, and as you noted, 3 or 4 years with 9 scores, if you can find those kind of players that can get in the end zone consistently, that's a difference maker.
Definitely. My player, I think will keep the streak going with 3 straight wide receivers. Antonio Brown.
Oh no. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh no. Go ahead, Bradley. I'm kidding.
I feel like I'm cheating, but at the same time, Antonio Brown's going as like the wide receiver 42 off of boards. And in the 9th round, 7 of those 8 games he played off the street. He had 5 or more targets. His second hog rate among all wide receivers in 2020. And the Bucs have a super easy schedule, but Brady still wants to put up stats. Like, I don't know if y'all saw the ring ceremony, but he's still fired up and wants to get even more over the next 2 years, I believe is what his trainer said. So all of that happened while Godwin and Evans were playing. So I'm trusting that not only is Antonio Brown like a wide receiver 3, but if either of them go down, he automatically like jumps into that even back end wide receiver 1. Like, he's one of the rare wide receiver handcuffs that could be a wide receiver 1.
Josh Gordon? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. I can't, and just to say it for your audience, it's not, I can't disagree with that analysis, Bradley, because I think it's fair. I look at Antonio Brown and, when's the next thing he's going to fling out a window or punch someone in the face? Like, I can't. And unless he's, living in the cabana with, Tom and Giselle, I don't know if he can even be on the field. I think he is living with. Is he still there? I don't even know.
He's got his own bedroom. He has to go to bed by 9 o'clock. He has to wake up and do chores.
Yeah.
So real quick with the listeners, I want everyone a chance here. We're actually giving away a free fantasy data sub. So Anyone listening, tuning in right now, who are your favorite targets in rounds 9 through 13? Comment for a chance to win a free Fantasy Data sub value at $90. We're going to pick a random person, whoever comments in here, and we're going to give away a sub tonight to the site. So if you're here live, make a comment. It's that simple. I'm going to have Ray pick a number, and we're going to randomly give it away. So we're nearing our end of time. So give me one player that you are avoiding, Ray, in these rounds, and feel free to say Antonio Brown.
Yeah, I got to tell you that I did Antonio Brown. I didn't follow directions well. So I'm looking at ADP right now as we're talking, because I picked a guy that wasn't in, because apparently reading is hard for me. I know it's hard for a lot of other people, hard for me too. So I'm just going through this real quick. I saw a name that I'll throw Corey Davis out there just because I'll keep the wide receiver train going.
That's
Billy,
my boy, but go ahead.
Well, so this is your anti-Antonio. I'm Brown is my guy. Davis is your. Oh, okay. Well, then why don't you? Oh, there's the buzzer. Ray's out. I would love to hear. I would love to hear your explanation of why. Just because he's the number one with the team.
That's part of it. I felt like he took a step forward. I'd also feel like the Jets are going to be similar to scenario to the Lions. They're going to be playing from behind and be throwing the ball a lot. I do think it's a crowded receiver core now with them re-signing Crowder. I was higher on him. We had Crowder left, and they still have Mims. I mean, there's a lot going on there. But I feel like last year he was pretty efficient with his efficiency metrics. And I think that he's, continues that step forward. I mean, I was as Bob Harris would say, I was too stupid to quit him in all my dynasty leagues and had him for years. And finally he broke out, and I felt like I was, finally on top, but I feel like I lost, but it doesn't matter. But at the end of the time, I do feel like he's going to continue that step forward that he took last year on this Jets team and lead this wide receiver core.
I just think it's tough because, we're obviously dealing with the rookie quarterback, and you never know how that's going to go. That could go great at the start. It could be slow play, blah, blah, blah. You got, a new coaching staff in there. The offense they're going to run with Scaramucci and LaFleur, it's pretty complicated. They say they're going to dumb it down a little bit, try to keep it simple. But one of the strengths of the scheme is that it is diversified, and that is one of the issues that it poses for defenses. So depending upon how much they have to, dial things back, I just wonder, and maybe this is a personal bias and one I can't get past. I am more pro rookies than I've ever been. Like 20 years ago, because I thought there's so many challenges and all of that. But when we talk about rookie quarterbacks, I'm still on the fence. A lot of times, even we remember the Herberts, right? The explosions. But a lot of times it takes a while. And if it takes a while for Wilson to get going here, and it's not till week 5 or 6 that things really get going, maybe that's just the reason I'm not as fan of Davis at his current ADP.
Okay, how about you, Bradley?
Yeah, I agree with Ray. I actually take Ray's side on this one. The more I'm looking at the Jets wide receiver core, Elijah Moore just continues to rise in my head. Like, if you're fading Corey Davis, I think you have to be a little bit more in favor of Moore, especially with the news today that Michael Thomas is going to miss the first 4 weeks or so. And that the New Orleans Saints are going to be looking for wide receivers. And I know that Jamison Crowder is still there, but there's rumors now that he might be on the move as well. So we'll see what they end up doing. But, there just seems to be a glut of useful wide receivers on that team. So maybe one of them is expendable. Yeah,
I think so. For me, Devontae Parker, he's going off boards as in round 11 as wide receiver 52, and he's just a guy I want no part of in 2021. He only played in 16 games once in his 7-year career in Miami. He's only eclipsed 800 yards once in his career. Last year, he finished as wide receiver 40, starting 11 of 14 active games, totaling 793 yards and 4 scores. Efficiency wasn't his middle name. Parker showed serious separation issues in 2021. And he only had an average of 0.84 yards in separation, which was wide receiver 90. And he only averaged 1.56 yards per route, which was good for wide receiver 62. He had the 7th most drops in the league last year as well, with the additions of Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle. I think that Devontae Parker is going to have a tough year.
And his quarterback. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Oh. And his quarterback. Yeah. Yeah, the lefty quarterback. Well, we haven't had any comments yet. This is actually, no one wants to give out their sleepers. So
wow.
That's a dangerous night.
People are afraid to get yelled at. I do yell at people.
So Ray's an advocate of keeping quarterbacks in keeper leagues here, Bradley, and
in the first round, yeah,
in the first round,
it's a bold move, Cotton.
yeah.
I remembered always tuning into SiriusXM. I was driving home and hearing questions, and Ray would go on his rant about not to keep a quarterback in early rounds. And then the very next question would be, I'm in a keeper league and I'm wondering if I should keep my round one quarterback.
It's the best. Yeah. Kyle and I tried to put this to bed years ago. We had a 3-hour show where all we did for the 3 hours was talk quarterbacks and point scoring and the separation, how they're really, we put all this stuff. But yeah, it's always fun when you take calls in particular, because people on hold apparently don't listen, which is always, I don't know what they're doing while they're on hold, but they're not listening to the show, because you'll get a question, what do you think this year about, Ryan Tannehill? And then the next call, hey, I'm thinking about keeping Ryan Tannehill. It's like, oh, dude, we just 4 seconds ago, so yeah, it's always fun doing radio. It's never a dull night, as they say in the industry, I guess.
Well, Ray, I want to thank you for coming on. Really appreciate your time here tonight. I've looked up to you as a podcaster, as an analyst, since I really got into fantasy football seriously, years ago. And I just want to say thank you, and we respect everything you've done for this business and this industry. And it was an honor to have you on.
Oh, Bradley, Billy, thank you both. I really appreciate that. And Billy, thank you for the kind words. I probably don't deserve them, but I'm very appreciative of that. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It was a good time.
All right, Ray.
Thanks, Ray.
Have a good evening.
You too, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.